Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started this afternoon. So welcome everyone. My name is Jamie Haverhill and I am the Executive Director at the Iowa Healthy Estate Initiative, and be thrilled to partner with our Make It Okay Linn County Committee on bringing today's webinar to you as well. So our organization is a nonprofit working to make Iowa the healthiest state in the nation by improving physical, social, and emotional well-being. And we provide the administrative and program work for the statewide campaign, Make It Okay. So we're thrilled to partner with all of you. Just a couple of tips as I'm sure all of you are getting used to using Zoom, but as a reminder, if you would like to change your view settings, you have the option to do that. So you can, up at the right-hand corner, change your view if you would like the gallery or if you would like the speaker view. Feel free to toggle between as you wish as well. We do ask that you keep your device on mute during this event as well, but if you do have questions, please feel free to use the chat function that you can find on your screen as well, and we will do our best to answer those questions as well throughout the event. We are recording today's webinar, and you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording that you can share with others as you wish, along with some other resources that are available. So now it's my honor and privilege to turn it over to today's moderator, Carol Mead, who is going to kick us off today. So Carol.
Thank you, Jamie. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I want to welcome everybody to our midweek virtual series on Make It Okay, Aging in Isolation. This is our fifth midweek session. It's been a few weeks, so we're excited to be back at it today. And I'm going to hopefully be able to. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about Make It Okay and what we're doing here in Linn County, and then I'll introduce our speakers and we'll get started with our panel discussion. So Make It Okay is a community campaign to reduce stigma by starting conversations and increasing understanding about mental illness. The intent is to take a learn, talk, share approach. So we learn about stigma and what it is and how it can impact us, have sessions like this to talk more about it, and then encourage you to share what you've learned with your friends and families to really start to make it okay in our community. We do have the opportunity, or you have the opportunity, to become a Make It Okay ambassador if that's something you're interested in, which is one of the ways that you can share about Make It Okay. And when you receive your follow-up email after today's session, it'll tell you some Make It Okay ambassador trainings that are coming up. So really the basis of Make It Okay is just that it's okay. It's okay to be struggling with your mental health, and that mental illnesses are treatable and that things can get better. Recovery is possible through a variety of treatments, including medication, therapy, diet, exercise, and hopefully some support. And we know that this is a challenging time, and so that isolation is real, and that support is so important, and figuring out how to get that support from our loved ones is really important. Just a few tips for supporting someone who might be struggling with their mental health is, really the basis for all of this is to stop the silence, keep the conversation going, be willing to talk, and then listen. Really listen to what people are saying, and offer to help. It's not it doesn't need to be complicated. It really is just that. Be nice and listen to our friends and family. Just a few tips on what to say and what not to say. I think the easiest way to think about this is if somebody had any other diagnosis at all, what would you say and what would you not say? And you should really consider using those same words for somebody who's struggling with mental illness. So we wouldn't say snap out of it, pull yourself together, what is wrong with you? But really on the flip side, just asking how you can help, asking if somebody wants to talk about it, and then listen and really listen. Offer to take them to an appointment, offer to bring them some food, the same thing you would do if somebody was struggling with any other condition. We know that having conversations like this can sometimes trigger things for any of us, or you may know somebody that is struggling and you're not sure where to direct them. So we have lots of resources that are readily available for people, including the National Suicide Hotline. We are extremely fortunate to have Foundation 2 right here in our community, and you can utilize their crisis line, and they also have mobile crisis outreach that is available through that same number. We have the Iowa Warm Line, and then Your Life Iowa is another resource that you can use to get connected. I also like to point out that we are extremely fortunate here in our area to have some pretty fantastic local resources. Most of these agencies, all of these agencies have helped us throughout the planning of these sessions. And I feel so fortunate that we are able to take a really nice collaborative approach to help those who live in our organization. So Tanager Place, Foundation 2, Unity Point Health and Abbey Services, Mercy, and of course NAMI of Linn County is an excellent resource that you can go to just find some connections to other places in the community. And without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers first, our panelists, and then we will dive right into our discussion today. And we are extremely fortunate today to have four really fantastic panelists. And I'm just going to go through the introductions and then we'll get started. So our first panelist there is Dot Hinman. She is a community volunteer, most recently at Mercy Family Caregiver Center. She's volunteered at St. Luke's Hospital and at the Life Care facility where she currently lives. She was a national disaster team member of the Red Cross for 12 years. Before her retirement, she earned her master's degree in adult education from the University of Iowa and directed programs for adults returning to college. Kathy Good is a native Iowan. She grew up in Boone, and she earned her bachelor's and master's of social work degrees from the University of Iowa. Kathy started the school social work program for the Grantwood Area Education Agency. When she left Grantwood AEA in 1980, she started a private counseling practice and began teaching at Kirkwood Community College. She eventually became the coordinator of the Human Services Program and served as an interim dean of Social Science and Career Options Program. In 2001, Kathy took early retirement from her position at Kirkwood Community College and devoted more time to her private counseling practice. When her husband Dave was diagnosed with the visual variant of Alzheimer's in 2003, she reduced the numbers of clients she saw to be able to care for him. She retired from her private counseling practice at the end of 2013, and sadly, Dave passed away in 2015. Kathy has served on the boards and provided consultation to many nonprofit human service agencies throughout Iowa. She's made hundreds of presentations at conferences, in services, and more recently in a variety of audiences in her volunteer position as director of the Family Caregiver Center at Mercy. Dave Chensvold serves as the president and CEO of Healthcare of Iowa, a Cedar Rapids-based organization that provides oversight for nursing homes and assisted living facilities throughout the state of Iowa. Dave began his career in long-term care as the administrator of Edgewood Convalescent Home in 2002, and later served in similar roles at other Healthcare of Iowa locations. In 2015, Dave became the third president and CEO in the company's 45-year history. Healthcare of Iowa has had a relationship with Unity Point for over 30 years, providing Living Center West and the Transitional Care Center with daily operational and consulting support. Lindsay Glynn is the executive director of Abbey Health Aging Services, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping older adults of all income levels remain in their home as long as possible. Lindsay received a bachelor's degree in nonprofit administration and therapeutic recreation from the University of Northern Iowa. While working full-time in long-term care, she received a master's degree in gerontology from Iowa State University. She has worked with older adults in the nonprofit sector for over 15 years with a special concentration on therapeutic approaches for addressing barriers related to older adulthood. Lindsay is particularly passionate about creating opportunities for older adults to remain active, healthy, building social supports, and receive the assistance they need to remain independent and in their homes as long as they wish. As you can see, we are extremely lucky to have such fantastic panelists today. And so we're going to go ahead and dive right into this. And I'm going to start with Kathy, who's going to give us a little bit of an overview about ageism. So Kathy, I'm wondering if you can tell us how ageism impacts an individual's sense of self and mental health, and how it impacts just their individual willingness and ability to reach out and seek resources.
Sure.
I think Lindsay's going to pull up your slides.
Okay,
here.
great.
Or Jamie is. There we go.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to start with some definitions. So when we think about social isolation, we're thinking about physical separation from other people that gets exacerbated sometimes by living alone or by having few friends or family who are not really attuned to concerns. And when we think about loneliness, we're thinking about distress feelings of being alone or separated. So next slide, please. So one can be socially isolated but not lonely. One can be lonely but not socially isolated, and one can be socially isolated and lonely. And then I'd like to define ageism and have us think about how ageism impacts older adults, period, but especially during the pandemic that we've been experiencing here for almost a year. So ageism manifests itself in, let me go back and just read that definition of ageism. So stereotyping of and discrimination against individuals or groups because of their age, which can contribute to both social isolation and aging. So ageism really manifests itself in prejudices towards older people, old age, and the aging process. And we see it in our culture, like through our language when we talk about people being over the hill, or we see stereotypical images of wrinkled faces or bodies humped over a cane, or black balloons for birthdays for people over 40. Mandatory retirement at age 65 and viewing older adults as one group old instead of seeing the diversity that we see in people of other ages. So I think that negative impacts can have a significant, attitudes can have a significant impact on the health, well-being, and involvement of older adults within a community. And ageism can influence the way that decisions are made about older people. Within healthcare, sometimes age rather than health status can influence decisions. And within the workforce, accommodations, flexibility are often not in place to provide opportunities for older persons' experience and abilities to be utilized. I think that older adults today are less likely to live in intergenerational communities, although we have seen this now being on the rise again, and are less likely to participate regularly in traditional faith-based groups. So older adults are living longer and thus may experience physical and cognitive limitations. And this was an interesting statistic. Older adults tend to outlive their decision to stop driving by up to 10 years. So some have said that ageism is the most tolerated social prejudice when compared to gender or race-based discrimination. So ageism in our culture can have a profound impact on older adults and how they see themselves if older adults have accepted the views of society and integrated those, and then are dealing with other issues like physical and cognitive decline, if they have financial issues, if they have caregiving responsibilities, if they are part of a minority group, they may feel even more marginalized. So society's view, maybe the next slide, and issues related to aging may make it difficult for the older adult to maintain good self-esteem, may contribute to the development of physical and mental health issues, and contribute to isolation and make it more difficult for older adults to utilize the resources that may be available to them. One of the avenues to resources is through the internet or online resources that are certainly were available before the pandemic, but they've been available in spades since. But if older adults have accepted an integrated society's views of old age, they may feel that they can't learn how to use a smartphone or iPad or computer, and thus be bereft of the resources that even are available to them. Carol, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Kathy. That was really informative. We're going to move into now the impact of COVID, that COVID has had on isolation and the mental health for the aging population. So with aging and the isolation crisis taking place, many elderly have lost their sense of identity. What are some things to help with the identity crisis with the elderly in isolation? And I just turn it over to any one of you guys who wants to jump in on that first.
Well, I can start. I probably have it better than most people my age because I'm part of a life care community, and I've got people who check on me regularly. I've got meals available and so forth. But the people I feel really sorry for are those that decided to age in place. They were doing just fine before the pandemic. They had church clubs, lunches with friends. They had lots going on. And all of a sudden the rug was pulled out. And there they are by themselves, living alone, often without access to internet, as Kathy said. And they really are in pain. For some, the only contact may be a Meals on Wheels driver, and their contacts with their families are really, really important. Families may feel like they're too busy, and often elders get the feeling that their families are way too busy to care about them. But families can help a lot in this identity if they affirm the person's importance as part of the family structure and continue to do Skype, FaceTime, phone conversations so that they're in touch. One of our residents has a son who, after every snowfall, comes in and shovels a heart in front of her window and then phones her so that she and her assisted living buddies can look out and know that they're loved. He blows them a kiss and he's off on his rounds. But families are so important. Families also can identify skills or help the elders identify skills that they have that could be useful to someone, knitting or crocheting, for instance, or checking on their neighbors. They might not like to be thought of as needing to be checked on, but if you give them a task, it makes them feel important. So those are just some things that I think can help.
Thank you, Dot. Dave or Lindsay, any additional comments to that question?
I think to sort of piggyback on what Dot is expressing as well is that loss of sense of purpose and the connection to family, and part of that loss of sense of purpose is their roles shifting and changing. I mean, we're talking about people that have worked really hard in their lives. They've been mothers, fathers, grandparents, and have had valuable roles. And now as they transition into another time period in their lives, what keeps them connected to society, what keeps them connected to their family, and what is their sense of purpose? And I think as family members and as loved ones and friends of those that are older, not being afraid to have conversations about those things to help people sort of explore their own sense of purpose and the role that they can fill within their family, within society. It absolutely can be related to things that they're interested in, and making sure that we're we're comfortable with being uncomfortable to have those conversations. I know so often family members maybe want to skip over the tough conversations. And so often those are the conversations that want to be had where, you know, I'm feeling isolated, I'm feeling lonely. They may not use that specific verbiage, but those conversations are really important to have and to help people explore their sense of purpose and what helps bring value to their lives and feeling valued in the community and in their family. Absolutely. I love this story of the heart, by the way.
I do too. That's amazing. Thank you for that. And I loved what you said too about, you know, being comfortable with having those uncomfortable conversations, because I think that's in so many things that we do. Those are the hard things that, you know, it takes some courage, even as family, to sometimes dive into that. So thank you for that. You know, I think another topic around that has come up as related to COVID is delaying grief. You know, we've had to, many of us, delay grieving for some of our loved ones, delaying celebrating, you know, the lives of some of our family and friends. And I know that that's been particularly hard on some of our aging population. So what are some things that we can do to assist the elderly who are in isolation with honoring their loved ones? I don't know who wants to jump in on that, but I'll take anybody.
Well, if no one else, we've at Cottage Grove, we've formed a group of widows and widowers and check on each other regularly, and that just that touch has helped a lot. Some of the things that people have suggested to me and that I found useful, setting up a tribute corner to the one you love with maybe battery candles and photographs, a memory box of things that were meaningful in your relationship. If anyone's lucky enough to have a garden, this is a wonderful time to plan a special garden, memory garden, to honor that person.
Excellent. That's a really good suggestion, Dot. Anybody else have thoughts on that particular topic?
I think Dot's perspective is fantastic. I don't have a lot to add other than it's just been, you know, it's challenging enough to go through something like that under normal circumstances. And now, at least in our profession, you have limited access to have a compassion visit, to visit someone at end of life and those types of things. So it's a smaller group, a lot more structured. And then afterwards, what's supposed to be in many people's minds a celebration or an event or something, or to have a lot of close friends together to grieve, is limited to groups of 10 people or social distance and things like that. So it's a really, really tough situation that I think what Dot mentioned is a really good thing. And the more people can grieve together and those types of things are very beneficial. But it's a real topic for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
I also might add that I think one of the things that all of us who are grieving miss is hugs and the sense of touch. And I don't have any good suggestions for that. Self hugs just don't seem to do it.
I think that one of the ways that we can give a written hug is by doing a handwritten note. And I think sympathy cards are great, but I think it's when, at least I remember when Dave died and we weren't socially isolated, but those handwritten notes that I got, those notes that reminded me of a memory that somebody was going to hold of Dave, a funny story that they remembered about him. All of those things were a way that certainly helped my grief over Dave's death. And so I try to remember and I'm not always as good. I have better intent than I do action, but to write those personal notes when I can't be someplace in person, I think that that's a way that we can give a written hug. It's not the same. Dot, I would certainly agree. I can't wait to be able to freely give hugs again, but I don't think I'll ever take hugs for granted anymore.
Absolutely, Kathy. And I think in addition to that, keeping in mind that the grief doesn't just end. And so sympathy cards, absolutely. And then some as time goes on. And just while we may have sort of pushed through some, they're not as close to us or what have you, people are working through grief for extended periods of time and not being afraid to continuing to have those conversations, continuing to send those written greetings and share those memories throughout time instead of, ignoring them. Okay, it's been 3 days. I'm ready to move on. It takes time. It takes time.
And I think that to follow that up, Lindsay, I think that I have been amazed how many people have remembered the day that Dave died or his birthday and sent me notes. I mean, those have been really meaningful ways to, I think, to reach out. They were certainly meaningful to me, and I'm assuming that they would be to other people too, so that you make a note of when somebody's loved one dies and you send them a note on that day, or you send them a text or you make a phone call, but just reaching out at that particular time, because I think people do have anniversary reactions to things.
Yeah, that's a really good call out, Kathy. And I love the idea of personal notes, because those are things that just are always welcomed, I think. And that old fashioned writing some memories is wonderful. Somebody put in the chat box, we give blankets that we put our love into that people can wrap when they need a hug. So that's a really sweet idea as well. So thanks for sharing that. I'd like to move on a little bit to talk about the importance of connectedness and hope and purpose. We know in normal times, we've been able to offer and suggest a safety net for our aged population when they're feeling isolated. Maybe it's church, family support groups, social gatherings. Dot, you were kind of talking about that earlier, that's some of those people who are living at home. That's what they were doing. And this has become really, really hard during COVID. For some people, probably non-existent. How do we help to rebuild or replace this safety net for our elderly population who's feeling isolated?
I think some of the most important things are making sure that people have the resources that they need to stay connected. Kathy and Dot both mentioned that people may not have internet. I think in addition to that, as younger people, recognizing the ageism simply within our system as well, access to technology, knowing how to use technology, and not just assuming that we should use certain platforms, but making sure that they're accessible over the phone or writing letters, making sure that we're meeting people at a level that makes sense for them in their life, because they may not have access to resources or know how to use them in the way that we do, that maybe somebody in their 20s would take for granted. Oh, yep, let's go ahead and connect over Zoom or what have you. Making sure that we're offering accessible resources is really vital as we continue to move forward.
I can second that. I know one of my neighbors received an iPad from her church with very detailed and clear instructions so that she could join them by Zoom, because she's really technophobic, and that was just a beautiful gesture. And I suspect that maybe church members, if someone were living alone, could visit the person socially distanced and show them how to use it and stay with them during a church service so that they could participate. It's also a way that churches can make members feel important if they can designate them as a calling committee or welfare check person and give them a job to check on others.
I think it behooves any organization that its members are older adults to have a plan, to put together sort of a plan of what can be done. I mean, this is an awesome thing that a church, sends out an iPad. Wow, that's wonderful. And I think that we have to reach out because even though resources are there, I think that if you are socially isolated and you're dealing with health issues or financial issues or whatever, you may not be able to have the energy to contact whoever you need to contact to say, I need some help. So I think organizations need a plan. I think we need to reach out and say, how's it going? And pay attention to just even the nuances of language, because I think it's hard, especially if you've been an independent functioning person in our society and you've had positions of authority, to say, oh, I'm in a situation now where I need some help. I think about that when I go out and shovel my walk and go like, what is it when I get to the point where I can't shovel my walk? It's going to be really hard for me to say, I really need some help, because I'm not very good at that, because I've been used to giving help and making decisions and being in charge. And so that's a process. And I think we need to be sensitive to that and letting people know that it's okay, and listening to the nuances and kind of maybe figuring out creative ways to provide for the needs that somebody isn't explicit in saying.
Thank you for that, Kathy. I love the idea of one being looking for if somebody needs some help, right? And then also asking for help is one of those hard things for so many of us. And, really making it okay, or like Dot has been saying, sometimes that's just what people are looking for, is to be the helper too. So if we can start to assign some of those tasks, I think that's a great idea.
What I would just mention also, just, it goes without saying not to wait for people to ask for help, because I think that's one of those things that they may not, and just being aware of the folks that you know of or around, and asking the questions or providing solutions, even though they don't know to a problem that they're not aware that they have, or we're social animals, right? I mean, we're seeing all that now since March, and many people, even though the most unsocial people, still need to have human interaction. And as Lindsay said, you need to have a purpose in life. And that purpose may be very simple as, handing things out at church or running the AV system or whatever it may be, to arranging a movie night with your grandkids, whatever it may be. But there's a purpose there, and there's a reason for being. And this is just, we've all had to re-explore that here in the last year. And every generation is experiencing that equally. So this is one of those times that we just need to be aware of our surroundings and offer, so like I said, solutions to problems that people may not know or think they have at the time. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. I think on that line of solutions, I wonder if you guys could share some of the specific things that you guys are doing, whether it's in assisted living, your skilled facilities, nursing homes, day centers. What are some things, like some specific things that you guys are doing to help with this?
Well, I can jump in on this. There's no substitute for family and human contact with family. I know that is a large purpose and a large event for most people. It's just, it's hard to really, it'd be much easier just to paint the picture of where we were on March 9th all the way to where we are today. But I'll just kind of cut to where what we started identifying to do. And we're fortunate in a lot of respects that we have staff at our assisted livings, our nursing centers. That's a social standpoint, right? I mean, if it's a good substitute, instead of someone being home alone and having very few people now to interact with church or other social gathering type things, at least in our settings, there is interaction with staff. But from a contact standpoint, again, the first thought was like, hey, let's get an iPad for everybody and let's Zoom. And you quickly realize, there's some gaps there with how that can work on both the receiver end and the sending end. And so working through that with education, we're very fortunate to have full PPE and those types of things to help people learn how to communicate with families via Zoom and those kind of things. Again, you've seen many pictures of the hallway bingo, which again is a bad stereotype of probably of the sector at times, but again, trying to think outside the box with different things, different ways we can occupy time and stay social, that are as safe as possible. We've got to a point where we could do more visitations and get a little loose with that, and then county positivity rates went through the roof in November and kind of scaled us all back. But for the most part, it's technology based. It's again different ways to do events, dining type things where again, how can we have, it may not be the most ideal dining situation, but it's better than everybody eating in their room. When can we do that, and how is that done for some interaction? And then again, some of the other socially distanced type games and movie type things that you can do. But for many of us over time, this was how do we come up with this short-term solution to a very short-term problem? And it's all evolved to where we're coming up with short-term and long-term solutions for a very long-term problem. And unfortunately, we won't even be through, our sector will not even be through full vaccination in many cases till mid-March. So for all of us on here, we know that this probably isn't going to end anytime soon, that there's still going to be some isolation issues for sure.
One thing we've been doing at Cottage Grove that's been really popular, it's we don't play hall bingo, but we have hall happy hours with a happy hour cart that comes around with choice of beverage and a snack, and we stay socially distant, but it's been a good way to get people out of their rooms. Our activities people in assisted living and healthcare, since they aren't planning activities, have been focusing on both Zoom and Skype and FaceTime to provide contacts with families. And they've also been working on mealtime conversations. They'll walk around and introduce a topic, say, what was it like living in the Depression, or what was it like living before computers, and get a table talking about something so that it isn't just four people staring at each other and eating their food. So that, I think, has helped a little.
Aging Services has 3 adult day health centers, which for those of you that aren't familiar, it's a building where those with health challenges can go during the day to receive the care that they need so that they can return home in the evening and receive medication, have meals, participate in social activities. And it's one of those services that was mandated to close in March, and while bringing vulnerable people together is certainly high risk, it was definitely something that we wanted to analyze to see if it's possible to continue to bring people together and in what way. And so we're incredibly thankful to have the opportunity to welcome people back into our adult day centers while also practicing social distancing. And so in adult day health right now, we have limited the number of people that are able to attend, but everybody has PPE and we're socially distanced. And one of the things that I'm really proud of these days is it gives us the opportunity to offer technologically based programs and activities as well. So not only are we connecting the 3 adult day centers through Zoom, but we're also connecting people, participants with other day hub centers or other community providers to really connect people throughout the community. And it's nice because we have staff available to really help connect people in that way. And so it's been a really interesting journey, but we recognize that adult day services are pivotal in individuals' health and keeping people connected and being able to do that safely.
Well, at the Caregiver Center, in our effort to reduce isolation and keep our caregivers connected to us, we have done a number of things which are not unique at all, but we've tried to be consistent in doing them, and that we've delivered care packages several times. And I think it's not so much of what's in the care package as the fact that a care package was delivered. And we've done it in a socially distant way, hopefully safely. We've made more phone calls than we've ever made on a consistent basis. We've sent handwritten notes. We've had some volunteers say, well, what should I write? And I go like, whatever you might say to your aunt or your grandmother or your mother, or it doesn't have to be profound. It just has to be like, hey, I'm reaching out to you today, and you know, I shoveled the walk and made chocolate chip cookies, and thought about all of the times that I bet you've made chocolate chip cookies. I mean, it doesn't have to be profound. And one of the things we also did is in one of our mailings, our monthly mailings to all of our caregivers, is we sent some postcards that said hope on the outside, with the idea that then they might want to reach out to somebody that they wanted to give hope to, so that you know, we're providing all the time for caregivers, but sometimes caregivers want to do something back or for somebody else. And so that was one of the things that we offered, to say, maybe you want to send out a hope card. I got one back. It was really lovely. I didn't need it, but it was really great. But the idea being that there's something that somebody that is kind of isolated could do for somebody else.
Excellent. Thank you for that. You know, I know that you guys are doing, and we've kind of already started into this sort of last area of strategies and resources to help individuals and their caregivers. And I know in the chat, Lori specifically called out you, Lindsay, to talk about some things that you guys are doing.
Yeah, so we have a lot of really amazing things happening. I know Dot mentioned specifically individuals living in their own home, and making sure that we're connecting people that are living in the transitional care center. And so one of the things that we're really excited about is being able to partner with Iowa Big to help students really explore aging in isolation and creating solutions to problems. And so the students created a program called Friends Across Gens, which is just really exciting. And they've been able to accomplish so much so far, from being able to make phone calls, which is really important. Again, you know, back to the basics and making sure to connect people. We also have had the opportunity to make blankets and have them delivered to the transitional care center and other residential communities. Holiday packets and care packages as well to our adult day centers and those living in their own homes. And they're currently working on Valentine's greetings and just really making sure that they're reaching out to people in their own homes and different units to make sure that people are feeling connected. We're also really excited. Yes, the intergenerational connections, absolutely. I think it's so key, really connecting students specifically to older adults, because again, that can really, it's shown us that it can help build one sense of purpose. I know sometimes even framing it, we've had connected older adults with students that have needed assistance of some kind, and really building those connections in that way has been shown to be incredibly valuable. And so we're just making progress and continue to be excited about virtual programming that we are offering each and every month. For example, we have a program coming up where people can learn about star constellations with in partnership with Indian Creek Nature Center, chair yoga, things of that nature. So things are in the works. It's a matter of making connections and involving students as much as possible is just really has been incredibly valuable.
I might just reinforce that by saying that we're really fortunate at the Caregiver Center that a student group from Linn High School reached out to us and said, what could they do? And so in February here, they're going to be baking cookies and delivering, and they want to also deliver the care packages. They don't want to just make the cookies. So that's a really wonderful thing for everybody. It seems like it's just a win-win. And I think we have an incredible community that has as much outreach going on as it is. Not that it's enough, but that, you know, you think about the things that we have, you know, and the intergenerational stuff is awesome, because the more younger people that we have interacting with older people and thinking that that's a good thing is good for all of us.
I think it's good for them to, from a historical standpoint, to learn about what it was like in the old days when those of us who were elderly were young. We had some youngsters from Washington High School last year who came. There was supposed to be conversational practice for them, actually talking instead of texting, which we thought was really funny, but we had a really good time with it. I also wanted to suggest the use of the Gazette for people who don't use internet. They old folks like me read the newspaper. If it were possible to have a column on a regular basis about resources for adults, ways they can be useful, that might be helpful.
Excellent. Dave, anything you want to add in terms of strategies or any resources out there that either individuals or their caregivers too, that we want to make sure that we're talking about today?
No, I thought it was really covered really well by the panel. And again, I know it looks like many people on this call might be caregivers as well. And it just talk about the true heroes that have gotten us through since March. So just again, a thank you to all of you there, but and the hard work that they're doing. And again, as we went through March, April, May, and really didn't know what we were up against, again, showed up to work every day and help people in their homes or in centers or assisted living, wherever it may be. But no, I thought the panel did a great job with that.
I had another question. I wondered if Meals on Wheels delivery people could be used as sources of information on people who needed extra touches, or people who might be willing to volunteer, for instance, to be phone buddies with someone.
Yeah, that's a really great comment, Dot. Horizons and the Meals on Wheels program has been an incredible partner in making sure that we're able to get communication out and get people connected. Absolutely.
That's a fabulous idea. And, you know, I think all of these things that we're talking about, I feel like as, you know, we're building on them and we're learning from each other. And I think one of the things that I find so exciting about, as hard as all of this has been, you know, we're learning new ways to do some of our things that we did before. We're doing them differently. So people are learning that I can use this technology. I can use an iPad and it's not that hard. And, you know, I'm probably not going to break anything if I play around with it and I make a mistake. I might send a text to somebody that I didn't mean to, but that's okay. We all have done that. So I think that's pretty exciting too. So even listening to you talk about your guest speakers and that kind of thing, I've had to organize those things too. And now we don't have to figure out how to get people places. And, you know, we can do so many more things maybe than we thought before. I know we're all anxious to get back to doing things in person, but it's nice to know that we can continue to do some of this work through technology still. I hope that most of you saw what Lindsay put in the chat box, that if you're interested in learning more about aging services, she put an email up there, and please reach out to her, and because it sounds like they're doing some wonderful things there as well. I guess I'll circle back now. One, if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box, but circle back to any of our panelists who might want to make, just a final comment.
Well, one of the things that we've learned at the Caregiver Center as a result of the pandemic and having to move everything to Zoom is that we are no longer geographically limited. And so that's been a really interesting thing to think about in terms of how we connect with caregivers anywhere. And so we have, as Aging Services does, a lot of educational opportunities for people. And once we go back to in-person events here, we're going to continue to do Zoom, because that allows then people that live in Des Moines or Council Bluffs or Dubuque or wherever to have access to resources that otherwise that they may not. And those long distance caregivers who have relatives here in Cedar Rapids but live other places can hopefully feel more connected to the Caregiver Center and to the people that that they need to care for here. So we think that that was one of the amazing things. I mean, it was always there, but it just never occurred until the pandemic hits. And then you go like, oh, we could have been doing this. I mean, we've all had that experience because we're all communicating with, or at least I am, with my friends in Michigan and other places, and, by having Zoom events that just never occurred to us otherwise. So
Kathy, I agree with that 100%. In our profession, we've always kind of been behind the times just due to funding and some of those other things. And this has really forced us and the folks that we serve to just embrace technology. And it's kind of pushed us on, over the line and to really figure it out and how we can better utilize it. And I'll tell you, that's probably one of the good things that's going to come out of this pandemic, is that going forward, just the geographical limitations that people just weren't able to visit their loved ones, that now, heck, there's been a learning curve on both sides that's become a new normal, or maybe a local church service that you're from Michigan, your family's here, and so now you're in assisted living here in Cedar Rapids. You can watch your local church service back and where you came from. Just all those other things are going to be really neat that come with it. It's just pushed us in the future, probably 3 to 5 years ahead of where we would have been otherwise. So it's not all bad.
So I don't know if there is a question that came through the chat. In my agency, we're trying to get information out to people to let them know we're available as a resource, but of course, it's more challenging to reach people who are isolated. Does anyone have suggestions on how to reach out to people who may be in need of connections or resources beyond through our personal contacts? I loved the newspaper idea, by the way. Any thoughts on that? How to reach out to people?
Yeah, Nora, I'm so glad to see you. We're going to be meeting. And I think what you're doing is absolutely fabulous. I love that you've reached out and said, hey, let's connect, because there are important organizations that certainly have connections to people that may be isolated. Aging Services and our meeting, absolutely. We love building relationships and collaborations, because we certainly want to make sure that resources are available to the people that we serve. Heritage Area Agency on Aging as well. They invest a lot of time and resources into finding those people that you're referring to that aren't necessarily reaching out to say, hey, I need some assistance. And then similarly, what we talked about with Horizons and Meals on Wheels participants, somebody may be interested in getting food, but may not feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm lonely. And so being able to work through community providers and build partnerships are really key. And I think everybody's interested in making a difference and making sure that we're meeting people's needs. And so I think you are absolutely on the right track, and I'm just continuing to build those relationships.
And I also wonder about, churches have publications that go out in all kinds of shapes and forms. And I think that they are an amazing resource as a way to get your message out We for a while were putting little what I call them blurbs, about not very much wordage, but if you were a caregiver, so that, and again, they would have to call us, but we wouldn't be calling them. The other thought that we're working on here is, and maybe there needs to be a collaboration, but that if we could have a family caregiver representative in every church, somebody that knows the congregants, that knows what the needs are. It might be easier to talk to somebody that or somebody in the church would know who somebody needs. So maybe that needs to be a community collaboration instead of the Family Caregiver Center just working on that, by itself. Although regardless, I would like to think that we as a Family Caregiver Center are, if somebody needs to go someplace else, we're helping them get wherever it is that they can get those community resources. So.
Thank you for that. Wonderful suggestions. And I love the idea of collaborating and working on this together. And I think that's what I find so exciting about all of the sessions that we've done. And this one in particular is really near and dear to many of us. And Dave, you're right. I mean, in my book, you guys, as well as your frontline staff, have been some of the biggest heroes through this pandemic. And I'm so thankful to have so many wonderful community partners in this effort.
Again, I just appreciate all the work that everybody has done with every kind of portion of working with this generation. Has there been any discussion on how to deliver information about the vaccination process when it becomes a little bit more robust, and how to get folks that are home or in more isolated situations, how to let them know when and where and how to get them to things, or is it really kind of dependent on physicians or and doctors' offices and that? I mean, again, I know how we handle those things, but obviously that's one of the things is we want to get beyond a lot of the challenges we're facing right now. That's going to be one of the avenues. And I just didn't know how that communication process was taking place.
That's a beautiful question. I'm watching Lindsay smile, and I was thinking maybe she had an answer. I don't, and I'll tell you the truth. I have some very dear friends who are in their 70s, and they're people that I spend a lot of time with personally. And so I was texting them like, we need to get together. When are you getting your vaccination? So, I don't know if there's anybody on this call who knows the answer to that question, but I think it's one we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, so I'm smiling and laughing because it's a huge topic of conversation right now that nobody has the answer to, right? So our public health system absolutely is being a great resource, and they're really the experts to reach out to. And I know that they are right now they're in the process of collecting as much data as possible. So we get emails all the time, like how many caregivers are you serving? How many individuals are you serving, so that they can prepare for when that vaccine is available to go ahead and start distributing out into the community and having clinics. And so they're really describing it as like a hurry up and wait, and making sure that we have all of the information that we need to go ahead and move forward. And unfortunately, in addition to that, a lot of different rumors have been spreading about where to go and what to do as well. And so I think part of that communication process is making sure that people have the right information as well. So it's a huge topic area, and I'm with you. It's like, okay, let's get everybody vaccinated yesterday. And it's just such a bigger thing than that. And so it's just, I'm incredibly passionate about it. And I'm like, yep.
And I think that there is some idea that people's physicians through their clinics we'll be reaching out to people and giving them that more information. But I think it keeps changing all the time. And I think people have to have a lot of patience, because I think that they think that there's going to be enough vaccine, and then whoops, that didn't get delivered, or they got less than what they thought. And so I think it's a very changing kind of daily need for updates. And so I think it is confusing to people. But I think that
Oh, she muted. Kathy, you muted yourself accidentally.
Yep. Oh, there she is.
so I think that from the Mercy system, I think that it will come through the clinics as I understand it, but I'm not really a spokesperson for Mercy at this moment as it relates to the vaccine.
Yeah, and I think that I think you're right. I think many of the primary care clinics are taking that approach of that they'll reach out. I know that there's been some things in the chat box about Hy-Vee, who will be giving some vaccinations. And just like, if there's one thing we learned in 2020 is that this is all fluid, right? And we're learning as we go every day. And anytime we're, there's this whole up chain of bringing the vaccinations to each state and then to each community, and messages change because numbers change, and being flexible will continue to be a wonderful skill that we'll need to continue to have, I think, in 2021.